Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can purchase Bitcoin on the EasyEquities platform. In addition, stay to the end as I shall also cover what Bitcoin actually is and share my thoughts on it. So let's get started. So how do we buy Bitcoin? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and head over to the EasyEquities website. So let's do that. As per usual, we're going to click on the login button and we're going to log into our account. So once we've logged into our account, we'll come to the following page. Now please make sure that the EasyEquities ZAR tile is selected. What I want you to do is I want you to come down here. You're going to click on crypto. Once you've done that, you're going to scroll down and what you'll see is that there's one instrument for crypto on the EasyEquities platform, and that is called the EC10. So I want you guys to go ahead and click on that. Now, we all know that this is how EasyEquity presents their shares, their instruments. We have the standard performance over the last few days, the last month, 3 months, 6 months, etc. And we have the price per share, if you want to call it that. Now, what is EC10 exactly? Well, in order to understand that, we're going to come over here and it shows you the underlying investments. Now, EC10 is essentially a market value weighting, which I'll explain in a bit, of the 10 largest cryptocurrencies in the world. So what is a market value weighting? Well, a market value weighting is where they weight the cryptocurrencies in the specific share based on that cryptocurrency's market cap. So Bitcoin right now is the most popular cryptocurrency in the world. Because it's the most popular, most people own it, and it has the largest market cap. So knowing that Bitcoin has the largest market cap, we would expect it to have the largest weighting, which we see is the case. When you buy a share of EC10, 57% of that amount you've invested is technically invested into Bitcoin. Then 23.4% is invested into Ethereum, which is the second most popular cryptocurrency. So this entire share, this entire instrument is based on the market value of your top cryptocurrencies. So you guys can go here, give it a look. You can see all the cryptocurrencies that you will be investing into when you buy the EC10 share. Now, like any instrument on EasyEquities, you can either buy a certain amount of shares or you can determine the exact random amount you want to go ahead and invest. So quite simply, you're going to come here, put in the random amount you want to invest or the number of shares you want to purchase, which would currently be at this price at the time of making this video, and you'll click. I recommend clicking once off. I don't do recurring investments, but that's how you go ahead and you buy crypto on the EasyEquities platform. So before you buy any investment, you know, if you've been following this channel, that I recommend you deeply understand the underlying investment. In other words, invest in what you know. So with that being said, what is Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and where does it derive its value from? So Bitcoin is essentially a digital currency that was born in January of 2009. It was supposedly created by a gentleman by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, who detailed the invention in a white paper titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Now, Bitcoin, as you might have gathered, is an intangible currency. There is nothing which can be touched. It is purely stored electronically. It can become a tangible currency, however, when you exchange your Bitcoin for a traditional hard currency, such as the rand or the dollar. Now, unlike traditional currencies, there is no entity which issues Bitcoin or is in charge of processing the transactions. Instead, Bitcoin is operated by a network of miners or computers who are responsible for issuing Bitcoin and processing the transactions. Now, Satoshi, the man who supposedly made Bitcoin, starts off the white paper by saying that the financial markets and the transactions which take place within them are governed and controlled by third-party financial service providers. These banks, so to say, are essentially the vessels which instill trust in an exchange between two people. They make sure that money can be delivered or received between two parties in a quick and convenient process while meeting regulatory requirements. Now, In this day and age, we can all agree that this is very important. To have a service that allows us to send and receive money through an intermediary greatly accelerates the rate at which you are able to conduct business. Imagine if we didn't have banks. I would have to take us back to the age-old tradition of bartering, essentially, where you had to go in person, meet with someone who you're wanting to exchange goods and services with, and at that moment you can then trade your money for a good or a service. This is extremely inconvenient where you think about it. Imagine if you had to meet people in person for every good and service you purchased today. Could you imagine? You would be driving and flying all over the world just so you could pay people. Imagine how much time that would literally take out of your life. But anyway, banks are valuable in this respect. But in this white paper, Satoshi goes on to illustrate that to have these banks serve as the intermediary, the person of trust in a transaction comes at a price. He then goes on to propose the use of a cryptographic service that provides the trust that is ordinarily provided through a bank, i.e. the money is actually transferred and the funds exist. But this time, there is no actual work being done by the third party, i.e. the bank, and therefore there is no middleman driving up the transaction price, in theory. This type of system cuts out the middleman and thus allows for transactions to be processed at a lower price, virtually free, when compared to banks. Hence the term peer-to-peer system, i.e. there is no middleman. Now, very important point here. This is not to say that Bitcoin is always cheaper than traditional systems. As far as transactions go, Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies usually have a standard fee that does not vary depending on the transaction amount. However, banks, on the other hand, could have transaction fees which vary with the amount of the transaction, or they could be fixed, or they may not have any fees. But generally, the larger the payment being made, the better it is to use crypto, because most services such as banks and credit cards use percentage-based fees when it comes to making large international transfers, for example. So in this little chart here, you'll see roughly over time what the fees have been per transaction for Bitcoin. As you can see, as of now, it's hovering around the $4 mark per a Bitcoin transaction. So I do need to also mention that there are some crypto exchanges which are essentially crypto banks, which allow for inter-exchange transactions with zero fees. Yes, zero fees. That's because these exchanges normally will bear that cost, i.e. it is totally free for you to transfer crypto to another party or vice versa. But this is only if the person is on the same exchange as you. Now, just to be clear though, EasyEquities is an investment platform and is not an exchange where Bitcoin can be exchanged and transferred. Then there's also the issue of speed. Now, this is a contentious debate in the crypto community. Bitcoin on average takes roughly 10 minutes or so to process a transaction. Credit and debit cards, on the other hand, are much faster and usually instant. When it comes to banks though, we know that these transactions can usually take much longer. But then again, it depends. Interbank transfers will be, relatively speaking, very quick and quicker than Bitcoin for that matter. But when you're looking at cross-border and different bank transactions, crypto starts to become much more appealing, as these can take days. As someone who is also interested in sustainability, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the energy it takes to process a single Bitcoin transaction. This can be illustrated by the following graph. As we can see here, this is the amount of energy it takes to process a single Bitcoin transaction versus 100,000 Visa transactions. This is quite alarming in my opinion. It is also quite clear, based on the chart, that Bitcoin can have clearly a detrimental effect on our carbon levels. So, Bitcoin, it is essentially or cryptos in general, it is essentially a new technology which allows for transactions to be processed at a lower price, depending on how you view it, when compared to banks and credit card service providers. As for whether or not you should invest, I believe you should make your own assessment. It is extremely volatile, and your assessment of the underlying demand for Bitcoin, which is what drives the price of the asset class, will be driven by many factors. This type of assessment is too complicated for for my liking, and hence it is not something I plan to waste my time on. I have invested some of my money into crypto, but that was with the intention that if I lost it, it wouldn't bother me. That concludes this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one.